Welcome to Victor Narrates Reddit. Like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Now, let's begin. My unfaithful wife cheated on me. She lost custody, and a stroke left her conscious but paralyzed for life. Cheaters always think they're one step ahead, until they forget they're wearing a GPS on their wrist. It turns out the only thing she was consistently logging was her own downfall. Her smartwatch logged a workout right when she was supposed to be at work. I took our family photos in front of her lover's house and watched her squirm. Elena and I are both 3'5" and have been married for 7 years with 2 children, one 5 and the other 3. I have been through a lot in my life to build a solid foundation for myself. I achieved it, and the final piece was my perfect family. I thought I had it. For me, I was living my dream, especially since my own childhood was trash. Elena ruined everything. I found out what she was doing behind my back, and I will find it impossible to forgive her. I was very happy with my life, but all of that is gone. I wish I could get that peace back, but I know I left no stone unturned as a husband. There was nothing more I could have done to prevent being cheated on. If it hadn't happened to me, I might even find it funny. I found out through her smartwatch. It's not a crazy way to discover infidelity, especially since it was the same watch I bought her for her birthday. She wanted to start getting serious about her fitness, and I gave it to her to help. I'm good with technology, but she isn't. I like to keep all my apps and operating systems updated, while she couldn't care less. I'm always helping her install updates, and that was exactly what I was doing with her watch that day. I got a little curious before installing the update. I decided to check if she was really working out as much as she claimed. She wanted to lose the baby weight and had struggled to really apply herself. She told me she was doing well with it, and I wanted to check her progress. She's not a stay-at-home mom. She has a job at a pharmacy, so she sometimes works night shifts. She lets me know when she has night shifts scheduled, so I had no reason to doubt her word when she told me. She said she had a night shift last Tuesday, and it was Friday when I decided to check her smartwatch. I looked at her workout history and saw one logged on Tuesday. However, I immediately noticed the route was strange. She likes to go for walks and jogs. The only time she goes to the gym is when we go together. I knew instantly that Tuesday's workout wasn't at the gym. I thought maybe she had unintentionally stayed active during her shift at work, but looking at the route map, I noticed it was nowhere near the pharmacy. When I pulled out my phone and looked up the address on Google Maps, I saw it was a purely residential area about 5 kilometers from her job. My stomach dropped when I saw that. I knew the GPS wasn't malfunctioning. It was 2 in the morning, so it wasn't at the beginning or end of her shift. It was right in the middle of the night, and the activity log lasted for about 30 minutes intermittently before stopping abruptly. I had an immediate suspicion, the same one any of you would have. I tried not to cling to that theory until I had more solid proof, but it was difficult. I had no prior reason to believe she would lie to me, but I also couldn't find an alternative explanation. So, I decided to check her phone. She didn't mind me taking it because, as I said, I sometimes just do it to update things for her. That was the excuse I gave her, and it seemed logical to her, considering I had just checked her watch. I went straight to Google Maps, as I knew about the location timeline feature that tracks where the phone goes over time. When I checked, I saw she hadn't even set foot in her workplace that day. She went to a restaurant, and about 2 hours later, she headed to the house in question. She stayed there all night and only came home in the morning. There was no possible excuse. I knew for a fact she was cheating on me, especially because she had told me specific details about her supposed night shift, talking about her colleagues and how she went down to the vending machines. Using Street View, I became even more certain of her infidelity. It was just an ordinary house. Nobody operates an informal pharmacy from a private residence. I already had enough information to file for divorce, but that didn't answer the question I was asking myself. I wanted to know who she was cheating on me with and why. So, I decided to check her messages, which was easy because I already had the phone in my hand. I thought 7 years of marriage had to mean something, but it seemed she didn't care at all, which was devastating to me. I found her conversations with someone named Julian. It didn't take me long to locate the chat and confirm he was her lover. It was heartbreaking to see how they acted as if they were doing nothing wrong. The messages got so explicit at times that I didn't want to keep reading, but I had to. I took screenshots of everything. Even now, I struggle not to reread them. I hate how they make me feel, but they rekindle my rage, and I think that's necessary. I can't let my emotions cool down. My home is going to be broken. I refuse to forgive a woman for being unfaithful. We have children, and I want what's best for them, but this is one of those situations where I have to put myself first. I wish I could stay with their mother until they're old enough to leave home, but that's too far away. I can't wait that long. The hatred will become obvious before 6 months are up. I'll figure it out one way or another. I don't blame myself for any of this, because I know I fulfilled my duty as a husband and a father. She's the one who ruined things. Update 1. This is an update to my last post. I confronted Elena, my unfaithful wife, and I did it in a way I think is quite creative. I needed to make sure I hit her hard. I wanted her to end up hurt because I was hurt too, and I think I came very close to achieving that. We occasionally do family photo shoots, and I told her I was ready for us to do another one, so we booked it for a month out. I took care of the photographer, but what she didn't know is that I asked him if his camera was capable of recording high-quality video, and he said yes. As the day approached, I told the cameraman that when the drama started, he was not to stop recording. I wanted all the footage. I didn't give him specific details because the last thing I needed was for him to stop recording when things got more tense. I chose a location. We always did our photos in studios, but I told her I had the idea of doing them on a nice street because it would give it a different feel and look more natural. I also claimed I had another garden-type spot in mind. Not true, but I was trying to keep her suspicions to a minimum. When the day came, we all got in the car and drove to the place I had chosen. I knew she would recognize the area we were going to because it was where her lover lives. I could see her looking out the window in the direction of his house. She tried to hide it, but she didn't do it very well. I parked right in front of the guy's house and said we could get out. She immediately said she didn't like the spot. I asked her why, and she replied that it was ugly. I told her we could get out of the car and at least try a few angles, to which she said she was willing to do photos in residential areas, but she wanted us to find a better place. I dismissed her concerns and got out of the car with the kids. Can you believe she refused to get out of the car for 5 whole minutes? She was acting like a little girl, but I didn't really blame her because I knew exactly why she was so hesitant. She was about to be posing for photos on the same street where her lover lives. And from everything I'd seen, the guy didn't even know she was married. That meant she would have 2 people wanting to give her a good scare. The point is, I wasn't going to let her get away. She called me and asked me to please tell her what was going on. That part made me laugh internally. I played dumb, and I know I acted pretty well. She was trying to figure out if I knew something and if I had chosen the location on purpose, but I told her no. In the end, she just jumped out of the car and begged me to make it quick. Even if I hadn't known she was a cheater, at that point, I would have had very strong suspicions just from the way she was behaving. She was extremely restless. She grew impatient with the photographer for taking so long, and I had to ask her to wipe her sweat, calm down, and apologize to him. Then we continued with the fun photos. The photographer was interacting with the kids, and the way she did it, they were making a bit of noise, but they were kids, so it was no surprise. However, Elena didn't like it at all. She kept shushing them and looking over her shoulder. When she shushed them too harshly on one occasion, I had to scold her and tell her to relax. She said she was just bothered by the noise because we had gone to an unfamiliar neighborhood and were causing a scene. They weren't really making that much noise, but she was extremely irritable for obvious reasons. I was hoping her lover would come out. I wasn't totally counting on it because I couldn't know what he would be doing on a weekend. However, I got lucky because he eventually came out of the house. The moment the door opened, Elena glanced back and immediately looked forward again. She had spotted him and told me she was going back to the car. I asked where she was going so suddenly, and she claimed she felt sick, so I let her go. Her lover introduced himself as Julian, so I knew he was the guy. Elena seemed to be quick enough to get back to the car without him seeing her. I spoke with him, and I hated that he was a nice person as much as I needed to hate him. He told me there was no problem with us taking pictures there. He just asked that we not make so much noise. I thanked him and told him that my wife had been very worried about disturbing the neighbors. So much so that she had gone to sit in the car because of how upset she was. I asked if he could do me a favor and tell her it was okay, since she wouldn't believe me. He said fine and walked over to the car. As he did, I told the photographer it was time to start recording as if her life depended on it. She gave me a nod. I saw him recognize her and jump back. I was close enough to hear some of what he was saying, and the last thing he asked was, "Elena?" I don't know what she said back. He looked at me and then at her. He pointed at me, and I heard the word husband. I know she was probably freaking out inside the car, but I could only see his reactions. I watched him get more and more upset with the situation. He demanded she explain everything right then and there. He stood there for a few seconds, very quiet, tapping his foot rapidly on the ground. Since she didn't seem to say anything, he stormed off and came towards me. He was angry, pointed his finger in my face, and asked who I was. I asked who he was because I was Elena's husband. I told him it was obvious he knew her, and he'd have to tell me from where, since it had clearly made him angry. He told me he was her boyfriend. That part took me by surprise because I had no idea their thing was that serious. I just thought they were having a fling. I asked him if he was kidding or not, and he stated they had been dating for about 3 months at that point. I assumed she had deleted most of the messages because I didn't see 3 months' worth of records on her phone. I let the guy know that I understood his confusion, but I was her husband and I had been with her for 7 years. I pointed to our children and told him they were ours. We were not a casual relationship. No matter how much she liked him, she had to acknowledge she was my wife. However, I made it clear that I no longer claimed her as mine. If he wanted to be with her knowing how she had lied to him, that was his decision. I was not going to continue with things. He started pulling at his hair in complete desperation. I felt a little bad for the guy, but he was still the reason my marriage was ending, so I can't say I'm going to send him a gift basket and flowers to console him. Elena played us both, but I still don't like him because he was a part of this whether he knew it or not. I looked at the photographer, and she confirmed she had recorded the whole thing. Elena didn't even get out of the car. I told Julian to go back to his house because I was going home with my kids and my future ex-wife. I advised him to go find some friends and get drunk. I had already had my time to process the news and adjust. Now it was his turn. Shortly after, we returned home. I paid the photographer what we agreed on and sent her on her way. The tension in the house was brutal, as we had to wait until the kids were in bed. The moment they were asleep, I approached her. I knew she didn't want to talk about it. Before I could even get to her side, she was already a mess of tears. She started by telling me she could explain everything. I don't know why I was in the mood to listen, but so I told her to explain. I wanted to see how she was going to twist what I already knew to be a fact. As far as she knew, I had just chosen the worst possible place to have our photo shoot. She told me the guy was just a friend who liked her a little too much. She claimed she had tried to get rid of him, but he was very persistent and she didn't want to cut him off completely, so he remained in her circle. I knew that wasn't true. It was too obvious a lie. I had seen the way she behaved from the moment we arrived at the house. She had clearly been there enough times to recognize the area and be deeply disturbed. I asked her if she had been to his house before. She paused. I asked her if she had spent her night shifts at his house instead of being at work. That part really made her tremble, and she tried to deny it, but when I got firmer, she stopped denying. She stopped insisting on her denial. And in that context, I took it as an admission of guilt. I asked her what he had that I hadn't given her. That was what I wanted to know most, but sadly, I never got an answer because she claimed there was no reason. She said it was just a moment of weakness on her part, but that made no sense because her moment of weakness had lasted for 3 months. She didn't realize it, but she had basically already admitted to the affair. So, I asked her again what she wanted to explain, if she had already acknowledged what she did. She just kept crying and it was getting on my nerves. I was about to start yelling at her, and the kids were sleeping. So I left the house, drove off, parked somewhere, and fell asleep in my car. She called me a million times, but I didn't answer. She was worried when I got back home, but I didn't say a word to her. I went to see a divorce lawyer just a few hours later, and now she has been served the papers. Our marriage is going to end. It hurts, but at least I know I gave my best at all times. Update 2: my divorce is final, and it was worth the wait. I don't like being divorced, but I didn't have a choice in any of this. I was cheated on, and that's not something I'm willing to compromise on or try to work through. The kids are in the middle of all this, and it bothers me, but there was nothing I could do. We are sharing custody. She got the house. She is receiving alimony and child support. She would have gotten a ton of money from our savings if I hadn't taken my share of the house's value. Although I feel much emptier, I'm happy to be done with her. I know I can finally start to heal, although it's going to be a very long road for me. I'm not looking forward to how much it's going to hurt. As one final shot at her, I made sure to post the video the photographer gave me. I know it won't have tangible effects on her life, like causing her to lose her job or be shunned by people, but it's a final dose of shame for her. And that's enough for me. I wanted her to be humiliated and in mental anguish in the same way she was when I took her to her lover's house. I wasn't there to witness her pain, but based on the fact that a friend of hers and her mom called me to ask what had happened, I knew the news had spread. That's enough for me. I'm not here to stay attached to that woman any more than necessary. We will be co-parents, and that's only because I have no choice. If I could have had full custody, I would have taken it, but it wasn't my choice. However, I have no regrets. I did what I could to make the marriage work. I married someone I never thought would cheat on me, so at the end of the day, it is what it is. Update 3: What Elena didn't consider is that her actions would have a domino effect that wouldn't stop. Shortly after the video of the confrontation at Julian's doorstep circulated among our acquaintances, his life also fell apart. The video reached his bosses and his own family, revealing that he was using his home for trysts with a married woman with children. Filled with rage at being exposed and judged by everyone, Julian blamed Elena directly. Furious, he showed up at the pharmacy where she worked to publicly confront her for dragging him into her family circus. The scandal at the counter was so big that the police had to intervene to remove him, and management fired Elena immediately to avoid further problems. With the video as proof of her negligence and the police incident at her job, I immediately went to family court. I demonstrated that the environment around Elena was unstable and dangerous for our 5- and 3-year-old children. The judge granted me temporary full physical custody and awarded her only supervised visits on weekends. Furthermore, by losing her job, the house we shared was at risk of foreclosure because she had no way to pay the portion she owed me or the maintenance. Alone, in an empty house she couldn't afford, rejected by Julian, and with her children away, Elena fell into total isolation. To cope with anxiety and insomnia, she began mixing alcohol with medications she had saved from the pharmacy, starting an accelerated physical and mental deterioration. Update for the day of the final custody hearing arrived. I presented the confrontation video and the police report to the judge. Seeing that she had no stability or income, the judge granted me full and permanent custody of my children, leaving her with only very restricted supervised visits. The following week, the bank officially foreclosed on the house after not receiving mortgage payments. However, before the eviction, Elena went to her mother to ask for money to pay the debt, but they ended up in a heated argument where she confessed to having been secretly taking savings from her. Her mother kicked her out of the house and forbade her from ever coming back. Without property, without money, and disowned by her family, she ended up in a small rooming house on the outskirts of the city. One night, consumed by isolation and resentment, she suffered a massive stroke while she was alone. Several hours passed before the owner of the place found her lying on the floor. Although she survived, the brain damage was irreversible. She lost the ability to speak and was left paralyzed. So the authorities transferred her to a state-run public nursing home where she will live confined to a bed for the rest of her life. Today, my children are 100% in my care, safe and at peace. We are attending therapy to process all of this, but we finally have the quiet home we deserve. Note: I carefully read all your comments on the previous post. Many of you insistently advised me to get a DNA test for my children, reminding me that she cheated on me for at least 3 months and that the doubt could destroy me from the inside. Honestly, at first, I didn't want to do it for fear of facing another lie, but I understood that I needed absolute certainty to close this chapter. I went to a private lab with the children and took the paternity test. I spent the most agonizing days of my life waiting for the results, but it was worth it. The analysis confirmed a 99.9% match with both of them. They are my biological children, without a doubt. Having that paper in my hands gave me a giant relief and the peace of mind I needed to focus all my energy on raising them, protecting them, and leaving this past behind once and for all.